Our museum president and founder, Kadish, has stated, "We are bound by a moral imperative to pay tribute to an entire generation that saved the world from a dark and murderous fate. We can never fully repay that debt, but nor can we be permitted to forget their sacrifices." And with that, we welcome our bagpipers to begin our program. I will now ask Bob Inslee of the Levittown VFW Post 9592 to instruct the posting of the colors.
VFW Post 9592, post color!
Stood tall with our veterans community since its founding. Local 138 of the International Union of Operating Engineers. Its business manager and treasurer is John Duffy, who will lead us in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Duffy, you can make your way here.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. I will now ask members of the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary Band to honor this gathering with the playing of 3 national anthems, bound together by the sacrifice of DJ. Please be seated. Invariably say, I'm no hero. The guys who didn't come home, they were the heroes. Nevertheless, those men who have joined us today helped change the world by putting on the uniform. I'll ask you to hold your applause until we conclude the honor roll. William de Groot. He went into the Army in 1940 at the age of 17. His mother had to sign the papers to allow him to go. He was stationed in Iceland for a time. It was a strategic outpost for Allied patrol planes trying to protect the convoys from U-boats. But by June 6, 1944, Private de Groot found himself coming ashore on Omaha Beach. He would subsequently serve under General Patton prior to the Battle of the Bulge. Decades later, he'd be honored for his role in helping to liberate France and Europe, and all of us. William Munier, a corporal who was in the Army of Occupation in Germany. He witnessed the devastation of a country that nearly destroyed the free world. In the words of Robert Jackson, America's prosecutor at the Nuremberg trials, the wrongs which we seek to condemn and punish have been so calculated, so malignant, and so devastating that civilization cannot tolerate their being ignored because it cannot survive them being repeated. Well, William, you played a role in ensuring that. Post-war, by the way, he worked at Grumman. He was on the lunar module team, so he's got a legacy on the ground and up on the moon. Calvin Blank was a private who served as an Army medic. He treated the men devastated by what they saw and experienced in combat. In those days, they called it shell shock. Today, we know it to be deadly and chronic post-traumatic stress disorder. Anthony Conolato was not here today. He wasn't up to it. He was a sergeant in the 70th Infantry Division of Patton's Third Army, a Battle of the Bulge veteran, a sergeant, trying to keep his men alive during that horrible winter battle. We're sorry he's not here. He's here for our 75th anniversary. We hope he'll come back and tour. Cliff Boring is a Marine. He still is. His 99th birthday was just last month. Cliff, we put a card in the mail. We put a card in the mail, but you know how the post office is, so maybe at some point. Let Cliff's battle record speak for itself. He served with the Marines in the Okinawa campaign. From May to July 45, he was the 5th Battalion, 3rd Amphibious Group. When he returned home, he served in the President's Guard. So if you want to talk about valor up close and personal, talk to Cliff. Charles Laura enlisted at the age of 17 in the Navy. He saw combat action in the Pacific. He would be among those in Tokyo Bay as a Japanese delegation climbed onto the neighboring USS Missouri to sign the Instruments of Surrender. I would say this is a good time to let these men have the recognition that they deserve. He has been tireless in helping guide this institution since the day we opened. Among his efforts, funding an educational program that allows the Army Museum to reach educators and students across the region. Gloria Sessa, where are you? Gloria is our educator. She's the, I want to get this right, president of the Long Island Council of Social Studies, and has been an advisor working with Mike to make sure that we're able to tell the history. Trustee Sabricone, you are welcome to the podium.
Well, thank you, Gary. Always a pleasure to be here. And look at this great turnout today. It's tremendous. This is unbelievable. We need to work on the air conditioning though, Gary, for our 81st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. But it's amazing as I look at these veterans, and you know, one gentleman's 17 and his mother had to sign the papers. Well, the average age is 100 years old for that greatest generation. Right now, the average age of those veterans who are still surviving, there's around 200, is 100 years of age. If you were 23 or 24 back then, you were an old timer. So imagine that, right? But gentlemen, thank you so much. And Gary, thank you and good morning. It's a privilege to be among you on this historic anniversary observance. To Gary's point, the museum's founder, Lawrence Kadish, does indeed see the Museum of the American Armor as a classroom. You may see visitors, but Lawrence Kadish sees new students of history coming to visit, and we have enlisted Gloria Sasso, as Gary announced earlier, of the Long Island Council for the Social Studies to expand that effort. And this is an effort we truly need to expand in this state, and we're working with the Board of Regents. If you realize what our students get as far as a discipline in World War II or World War I history, it's embarrassing to us. We need our students not just to learn from us, but to learn from our education system, so they too can know about the sacrifices that our veterans made. In order for us to stand here today and be part of this. So I thank Gloria for her concern and her efforts to help make that happen. It remains Laura's single purpose to educate, to inspire, and to motivate a new generation. And so that they understand and embrace our nation's history, that is the mission of the museum. He founded and now sustains through programs and ceremonies as this. I too would like to acknowledge our veterans once again, all of you who have gathered here in the morning. One more round of applause, please, for our veterans. Beyond the remains of German bunkers and fortifications that still litter the Normandy beach, lie cemeteries filled with Allied troops who died taking their objective. It is therefore fitting and appropriate that we begin our program with a prayer offered by Monsignor James Lasante, pastor of Our Lord's Church, Our Lady of Lord's Church in Massapequa Park, and a good friend of mine. Monsignor?
Thank you, Mike. Can you imagine being in the prime of your life, late teens or early 20s, having everything ahead of you, and still being willing to say, I will serve, I will be wounded if needs be, I will die for the freedoms that I treasure. That's what we're celebrating here today. Remarkable men and women who lived that courage, didn't just talk about it. And we're just delighted to pray for them now, and that's what we're going to do. Those who served and died, those who were wounded, as well as those who lived on to build the country we enjoy today, thanks be to God. So let's just bow our heads for a moment. Lord God, thank you for the generosity, the dedication, the faithfulness, the loyalty of all the men and women who served at D-Day 80 years ago, but all of those in military service who keep us free, who help us to treasure and to live out the values of freedom. God bless them and their families for the sacrifices they've made. And now I thought to myself, much as we appreciate all that they've done for us, all that they've done in service to our country and our freedom, wouldn't it be great to live in a world where we didn't have to have young men and women suffer and die for us? A world of greater peace. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do as a prayer. They say when you sing, you pray twice. There's a song written in 1957 by Cy Miller, and even though Cy was a member of the Jewish faith, we use it in every Christian church. It's called Let There Be Peace on Earth, and we'll honor our veterans and those who serve by trying to sing that together. So come on, without accompaniment, join me in saying, let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be. With God as our Father, brothers all are we. Let me walk with my brother in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me, let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my solemn vow, to take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Thank God for all of our veterans for letting us live in peace by defending our freedoms. God bless America.
Nassau County Executive Bruce Blakeman is an avid student of history, but he's also a military family. You know, he firsthand what every military family knows. Deployment of the defense of freedom is not guaranteed you'll be coming home. Since taking office, he has led efforts to strengthen benefits for our vets and to empower programs so the new generations understand the enormous debt we owe our armed forces. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow, it's a great honor to introduce our county executive and my friend, County Executive Bruce Blakeman.
Thanks very much, Mike. And Mike, thank you for all that you do. You are a true American patriot, and we appreciate all of your efforts here in Nassau County and throughout New York State in supporting our veterans. Thanks, Mike. I also want to recognize all of the elected officials here, too numerous to name individually. I'm sure Gary Louie attended to those tasks earlier, but certainly Presiding Officer Howard Coppell and members of the county legislature, all the elected officials, all of the boards and members of the trustees who are here today for the Museum of American Armor, this gorgeous, beautiful museum that we have here. Thank all of the veterans that are here, their families and friends who've come out, and Monsignor Lisanti, of all your talents. This is one of the great orators in all of America and one of the great spiritual leaders, and you're also a really good singer too, Monsignor. And you're a good friend. Thank you so much. So, like many of you, I woke up early this morning, probably about 5:30, 6 a.m., turn on the television as I always do, and they were making preparations for the D-Day dedication that they have in Normandy, attended by our president and President Macron from France, representatives of the American government, the French government, and veterans who were there today to remember the sacrifices made by our military, by our young people. As I've said before, I'm one of the few people in America that can say that both their parents were World War II veterans. My father served in the Merchant Marines and Naval Reserve, 18 years old, second in command, on a ship with 1 million gallons of gasoline in the Northern Atlantic, in the Pacific, and the Middle East. My mother joined the Army. She was a surgical technician on a makeshift hospital in the salt flat deserts of Utah, where thousands and thousands of our American military were brought with very, very serious and debilitating injuries. So this is a very solemn day. It's an important day. It's a day that we think about how fortunate we are that there were those who were willing to stand up and give their lives so we could enjoy the freedoms that America has. There is no way we can ever repay that debt. The price is too high. The life of an American soldier. But what we can do is come each and every year and honor their memory, and do so throughout the year, whether it be Memorial Day or Veterans Day, or of course today, where we're here to honor those who gave their lives on D-Day. They were America's greatest generation. And now we have, you can clap for that. And now we have a solemn obligation, not only to memorialize and remember them, but we have a fight as well. And we have to step up to the plate. Are we going to stand for American values? Are we going to support the freedoms that we have here in America? Freedoms that sometimes we take for granted? It's our turn to step up to the plate and be the example for the generations to follow, our children, our grandchildren, and our great-grandchildren to come. So we're here today to honor and remember, but also let's use this as an opportunity to stand tall and to make sure that we have the courage to stand by American values and principles that made this the greatest country in the world. May God bless you all, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Thank you, County Executive. Thank you so much for being here and your words. It's important to observe that elected officials from two different branches of government, from the different political parties with different views on public policy, share this day as a respectful colleagues who share a commitment to observing this historic anniversary. By doing so, they reveal the underlying strength of where we live and why we are able to rise to the multiple challenges now facing us. It is my honor to introduce the presiding officer of Nassau County Legislature, Howard Coppell.
Well, thank you, Mike, and Gary, thanks for inviting me to this very important and timely ceremony. First, before I begin, I just want to acknowledge the attendance of several of my colleagues in the legislature. That would be Legislators Drucker, Getz, Strauss, McKevitt, Kennedy, and did I leave anyone else? No. Oh, and Mulaney, you're here too, Pat. Let me, and by the way, Pat is a Marine forever. You know, like many of us here, I had relatives who I knew well who served in World War II. And just coincidentally, several weeks ago, I was cleaning out, together with some brothers, my parents' house. We sold it, and we all know what that's like. And I happened to come upon a letter written from France by my uncle, one of my uncles, who was in the 82nd Airborne. Airborne. He parachuted into France on D-Day, and he was in the Battle of the Bulge. I know that. And that was Corporal, later Lieutenant Harry Silver, and he wrote some very moving, and I didn't bring it here to read because it's too long, but he wrote very movingly about his love for his buddies. He talked about the sacrifices that people made. He talked about how, notwithstanding the hardships and the terror that they all experienced, how that somehow brought him closer to God. It's hard to understand maybe for some people, but it's true. Now, all I can say is that these people suffered hardships, they died, they were wounded. And why did they do that? These were regular people, these were ordinary people. But they knew that there was a curtain of darkness which had descended over all of Europe and threatened the entire world. They had a job to do. They had a job to do, and notwithstanding whatever hardships there were, they were going to do that job. And then they came home. Many of them came home. Thankfully, many of them came home. Some of them didn't. And then they married, and they built families, and they built a peaceful and prosperous America for all of us. Because that was also a job that they had to do. And they did it. They did it without fanfare. They did it without self-aggrandizement. We owe them, and of course all of the veterans, before and after them, in all of our wars, we owe them thanks. As the county executive just said, we can never repay them for what they did for us. And so I want to say thank you to the trustees, to Gary, and thanks for inviting me. And I intend to bring my grandchildren here very soon. And I want to tell you all, bring your children, bring your grandchildren, because if they look around here, they'll get a sense and a feel for what happened and what these people sacrificed and what they went through. There's not enough of that today. When I was growing up, and I'm sure many of you, we had to learn, we had patriotism in our classrooms. We had to learn the stars, we had to learn not only the Pledge of Allegiance, we had to learn by heart the Gettysburg Address and the preamble to the Constitution. And I can still hear the teachers yelling at me for flubbing it sometimes. But we did it, and I still know it. Let's do that, and let's honor the sacrifice of our veterans. And the way we do it is by keeping their spirit alive. And the way to do that is by bringing our children and our grandchildren and teaching them the meaning of America, teaching them what people did back in World War II and in our other wars. So thank you very much, and God bless the United States.
Well, thank you, Presiding Officer. Thank you very much. I just want to make a small comment here after listening to Bruce and Howard. My father was a veteran in the United States Navy on the USS Southampton. He was drafted when my mother was pregnant with my sister. And he didn't think twice. He knew what he had to do when he went to war. But I think a lot of us toot our own horns nowadays. But as you talk to these veterans from that war, they don't tell you anything unless you ask them and almost beg them to tell you stories. And my father never spoke about it unless he was with his old Navy buddies and they were sitting down having a cigarette and dinner and talking about the tattoos they got when they went over the equator. But if you didn't bring it up to them and ask them to tell you, they just went on like it was every day. And I think that's something we lack nowadays. We always seem to want to tell our story. Not that that's terrible, but sometimes those are stories meant for certain occasions. And I respect our veterans so much for what they've gone through and what they've held together. So thank you again, gentlemen and ladies. Not far from here is one of Nassau County's legislators who on any given weekend can open the curtains on his home, pour a cup of coffee, and then listen to the sounds of the Sherman tank on patrol at the Neighborhood Museum of American Armor. And that sound makes him smile because he knows the tank's mission is to honor and educate. Please welcome Nassau County Legislator Arnie Drucker.
Thank you very much, Mike. I really appreciate it. I want to thank you and I want to thank Gary for all of you do, the entire museum board and all of the executives for what you do here. And we owe a debt of gratitude to Lawrence Kadish for his vision and his passion to create this jewel that we all have here that's true, I can see from my window. Sadly, not enough of today's young generation recognize the enormity of World War II, much less the D-Day, that was the pivotal turning point in that global conflict. Prior to D-Day, the road ahead for the Allies was projected to be long and bloody. But the Normandy landings dealt a mortal blow to Hitler's evil regime from which he would never recover. Within a year, Allied armies would be in Berlin. The Nazi state would lay in ruins, and Europe would be free once more. But D-Day was also something more. It was a testament to human resilience, unity, and determination in the face of overwhelming evil. At a time when the flame of freedom and democracy was dangerously close to being extinguished, those heroes stormed those beaches and rekindled its light. 80 years on, we remain eternally in their debt. God bless all of our veterans and God bless America. Thank you.
Gary, thank you for turning the pages here for me. Are we on the same page now?
We are, Mike. You do the New Testament, I do the Old, so we're good. We're good. Actually, I thought Monsignor, I thought I heard him at my shul as a cantor. I thought he absolutely got that song down. Absolutely right. Let me do this one. All right? Yeah, that is my name.
Now, we're opening for the Monsignor, by the way.
Right, that's true. Exactly. The county executive is going, where am I again? From 1940 to December of 1941, Great Britain stood alone in confronting the Nazi scourge. A nation that refused to surrender during those dark years would return to Europe on June 6, 1944, as part of an Allied assault on what Hitler called Fortress Europa. His fortress would not stop the men who came off landing crafts, such as the one that we have outside. Representing His Majesty's government is Ben Borelli, Head of Policy and State Government Relations for the British Consulate in New York. Ben.
Thank you, everyone. Hello, my name is Ben Briley, and I'm indeed here for the British Consulate. Very proud to be speaking alongside such a distinguished group of people. I'm going to start with the most important thing, to thank the veterans of D-Day, whose heroic service liberated Europe from the Nazi tyranny, ensuring our peace and freedom. Thank you. I would like to follow up with my thanks to the museum for hosting us all here today. It's events like this that ensure the heroic stories of D-Day live on for a new generation. And we remember the sacrifice so many made. Yesterday in Bayeux, the names of thousands who died were read out. The UK Armed Forces and alliances forged in that Second World War are still vital for European peace and security 8 years on. Our armed forces continue to operate around the globe, protecting us and defending the peace around the world, just as they did that day. But the scale of the Operation Overlord is hard to comprehend. 14,000 sorties flown by Allied air forces, 132 ground troops landing on the beach, and it's hard to remember these were all individuals, often very young, we were talking about. And I'm glad to say I have something of a personal connection here, at least to the Second World War, as all 4 of my grandparents served in the military and as civilians. So my accent might not give this away, but half of my family is from the US. My grandmother grew up in Middle Village, I think not far from here really, in Queens. During World War II, Estelle worked in the Pentagon as an aide to a general. My grandpa Joe was in the Aleutian Islands, I believe for the US Army, but he never really spoke about it, which I think is the same as many, many veterans. On the British side, my grandfather Alan was in the Royal Artillery in India and Malaysia. And my British grandmother Val was in Hut 6 at Bletchley Park, and we're particularly proud of this, if you know what happened there. Really, unfortunately though, I just didn't inherit her intellect, so that's a shame, but very proud of that service. When I told my aunt I was coming here today for D-Day, she pointed out a direct connection. My uncle's father, Harry Smilowitz, from Bayonne, New Jersey, served on the USS Augusta. Keeping in suspense here, aren't I? The USS Augusta was a heavy cruiser, there on D-Day, sailed over on the 5th, and it's part of one of nearly 7,000 vessels that took part in Operation Neptune, the sea part of it. I'm proud of that service, and I firmly believe it's important to keep those memories alive, and I'm very grateful for the museum to bring us all here today for precisely that purpose. I'm going to finish where I started, just to thank those veterans who served there that day again, and all the veterans here today. Thank you all for your service. I'd like to end with a poem, Normandy, written by another British veteran, Cyril Crane. Cyril passed away a few years ago, but aged 20, he was there that day, 80 years ago, on Juno Beach. Come stand in memory of those men who fought and died. They gave their lives in Normandy, remember them with pride. Soldiers, airmen, sailors, airborne and marines, who in civvy life was hailers and men who worked machines. British and Canadian and men from the USA, forces from the Commonwealth, they were all there that day. To Juno, Sword and Utah, beaches of renown, and gold in Omaha, that's where the ramps went down. The battle raged in Normandy, many lives were lost, but war must end in victory, and this must be the cost. When my life is over, and I reach the other side, I'll meet my friends from Normandy, and shake their hands with pride.
Thank you very much. There is no better example of joy of the human spirit than the newsreel footage of the Parisians welcoming the liberation of the city in the summer of 1944. For this was a nation that suffered 4 years of brutal occupation, where outside of Paris, in Fresnes prison, the Gestapo tortured members of the French resistance before executing them, and there were many such places of Nazi horror that wouldn't start to collapse with the coming of D-Day. Today we honored to welcome the acting French Consul General, Mr. Damien Laban, whose citizens continue to pay tribute every day to those who liberated their nations. Please welcome Consul General Laban.
Bonjour. To some of you, I might sound like Pepe Le Pew. Please bear with me, okay?
To the coalition that came together to organize this wonderful event, dear Michael, Bruce Blakeman, Howard Couple, and World War II veterans, esteemed representative of the Long Island community, Brent Brearley, dear friends, it is a real honor to be here today for me. Thank you for putting together an incredible program that brings together so many facets of a day and a war that was a major turning point in modern history and a defining moment for France, the United States, and all the other European countries. You have brought us the sounds, sights, and poetry of D-Day. It is exciting to see a landing craft such as this one up close, after admiring many of them in my favorite World War II movies. Listening to the Normandy poem that we just heard was very moving. And I am so humbled to see with us brave veterans that were actually present during these world-changing events. So thank you so much, veterans. One more time, thank you so much. As you know, D-Day was a massive air, land, and sea offensive by the Allied forces against the German army that was intended to bring a quick end to the war. It was the largest amphibious invasion in military history. 7,000 ships and landing craft brought, like my colleague said, 150,000 US, British, Canadian, and European troops to land on 5 beaches in Normandy in one single day, June 6th, 80 years ago. But as we all know, the German army was a formidable adversary. The beaches in Normandy were heavily fortified, and more than 10,000 young heroes lost their life that day. The brave and selfless men who landed in Normandy on D-Day and the fighting of Allied soldiers, sailors, and airmen on the Western Front, as well as Russian forces on the Eastern Front, led to the defeat of Nazi forces. It put an end to the German occupation of France and began the liberation of Europe. The courage, valor, and sacrifice of these men and the roughly 2 million Americans who served in Europe during World War II prevented the Nazi regime from continuing its unspeakable horror. It saved our country, it saved our values and our way of life. We will never forget. We will never forget. We owe you our freedom, and we owe you our democracy. This is why I am so grateful to be here with you today. So thank you, dear veterans, and thank you, America. I also want you to know that French and European leaders are celebrating this anniversary as well. Today, there was a ceremony at Omaha Beach with 25 heads of state and governments, including your president, Joe Biden, the German Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, Prime Minister of Britain, Rishi Sunak. And for 3 days prior to that, President Macron visited the World War II sites to remember the war and honor the men and women who fought for democracy, freedom, and human rights. Close to 150 Americans, vets, have been flown to France to take part of the celebration as well, including 22 who were part of the D-Day offensive. The first group arrived at Charles de Gaulle Airport on Sunday, where they were cheered by Parisians and introduced to high school students so that they can share their stories. Another 60 arrived in Normandy on Monday, where they were welcomed by French First Lady Brigitte Macron and regional political figures, as well as school children from the north. Commemorations like this one here today and those that are taking place in France are essential. They enable us to understand our history and for the younger generation to get a firmer grasp of their past. They help us take measure of the sacrifices that were needed to liberate Europe and to secure the rights of freedoms our people enjoy now. They give us a chance to pay tribute to the great heroes who gave us so much. But we cannot stop to that. We can do more. As President Macron said, to really do justice to these men and women who fought and died so that we could live free, we need to prove worthy of the legacy that they have left us. We need to protect and advance the democratic institutions they help secure by strengthening the alliances between liberty-loving peoples, nourishing the attitudes that allow democracy to flourish, reinforcing the national institution that allows us to resolve our differences peacefully, and continuing to cherish the long-lasting alliance between the two oldest friends in the world, France and the United States. So vive la France and God bless America. Thank you so much.
I want to thank you all. This program will continue. We have a couple of more speakers. At the conclusion, and providing the weather cooperates, when we are done here, we will go out to the D-Day landing craft and lay a wreath, and I hope that you will allow us to have you join us as we do that part of the program. Mike, I'll ask you to do the next introduction.
Thank you, Gary. Colonel Jason Halloran, retired, came to the board of the Museum of American Armor with an extensive military career. He resumed his resume just begins to hint at the expertise, experience, and leadership. He has served as Deputy Commandant of the United States Military Academy at West Point, was commander of the 5th Brigade of the Army Cadet Command, and has been deployed on overseas assignments. He was and remains the go-to guy for those seeking executive leadership. By the end of the day, I'm sorry, General, Commander? Gary, you didn't turn a page. I apologize.
Well, General, that means I get a pistol today, too. Oh, wait, New York, sorry.
Very good.
Well, as we're here celebrating D-Day, we here at the museum thought we'd tie multiple areas and battles together and bring you some of the Philippines in here as well with the temperature. But by the end of the day on June 6, 1944, some 2,501 Americans would make the ultimate sacrifice. Some 1,409 British, 391 Canadian, and 73 other service members from other countries, allied countries, would also meet their fate that day. Thanks to the research conducted by the Army Museum's Nick Cassius, we know of 2 Long Islanders who were among the casualties that day. They were part of an amphibious assault by over 160,000 Allied soldiers who went ashore under murderous fire that day to confront the Nazi scourge that 80 years later continues to cast a shadow on humanity. At this time, I would ask members of the Long Island Living History Association to please present the Normandy memorials with the names of the 2 Long Islanders. Private Charles T. Burns of Elmont was just 19 years old with the 116th Regiment, 29th Infantry Division. Private First Class Sidney Dungeon of Oyster Bay was with the 29th Field Artillery Battalion, 4th Infantry Division. Dungeon was 31 with a daughter at home he would never know. His remains listed as missing in action to this day. These would be just 2 of the thousands who would die establishing a foothold on the beach that day, but the Battle of Normandy was far from over. It would be a brutal, bitter, and contested battle until the breakout 90 days later. Among those Americans who would be killed in action was Peter P. McCardle with Company F of the 325th Glider Infantry Regiment, 82nd Airborne Division. He too is buried in Normandy, and his family is with us today. To those who have joined us today and those who have left us, we salute you all and offer profound thanks for a job well done. Your proud and lasting legacy is now part of who we aspire to be as Americans. Thank you.
At this time, I would ask the Armor Museum's Director of Community Affairs to come forward with a memorial wreath. It'll be placed later, as I suggested, on the D-Day era Higgins landing craft that is on display outside of the building. which time I'll ask the county executive and our two diplomatic representatives and presiding officer Coppell to join us at that time. I'm now going to ask for some assistance here in that our memorial bell is going to be repositioned to be in front of Mr. de Groot, who was at Omaha. Gentlemen, we could take this bell carefully and scout it over here. Mr. Inslee, could you join me over here, please, sir? Yes, it's as heavy as it looks. We're going to ring our memorial bell for each of the beaches that were assaulted on this day, June 6, 1944. Bob, I'll ask you to ring for the beach, Utah. The beach, Omaha. The beach, Sword. The beach, Gold. And the beach, Juneau. I will now ask at this time the playing of taps. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be making our way out to the D-Day landing craft to lay the wreath, so I'll ask you to leave us a bit of a corridor here so that our veterans can make their way out as well.
Ben! 1, 2!
see behind me is one of the D-Day landing crafts that would have been literally thousands that came ashore in Normandy. We are grateful that you made a decision today to be here. Come on in. Hold on tight.
Get them up there.
Oh, well.
God bless you.
You can always take a picture over. Yeah, you're
These gentlemen represent a generation that's really important to us. We're very grateful that you came out here today to be able to pay them tribute, to pay honor to those who served, those who continue to serve. A round of applause, please, for these gentlemen. And to our diplomats who have braved the Long Island Expressway, a round of applause for them making it out to Long Island today. Thank you very much. To those who are videographers, if you wanted to talk to anybody one-on-one with a mic, this would be a good time to do it. Channel 2, Channel 12, if you want to have a conversation, this would be the time to do it.
Bill, stand on that